Good evening, Alachua County. And thank you so much for that warm welcome to your Alachua County property appraiser, Aisha Solomon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you for the ninth Probate and Estate Planning Summit. I want to thank Miss Solomon and her team for the work that they are doing in this area. I've traveled all across the country working with heirs property owners. And let me just tell you, Alachua County, what a treat it is to have a team like this working for you and providing this service to your community. The program that they are providing tonight and throughout the year is a model for other counties and cities to follow. So let's give Miss Solomon a great round of applause and her team. I'm Monica Rainge, and I'm so honored to be here with all of you tonight to serve as your keynote speaker. I am passionate about heirs property. It is my mission in life, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I got into heirs property work. But tonight I want to just get a temperature check, see who's in the room. How many of you own property here in Alachua County? Stand up if you would. Awesome. Now, how many of you are the only owner on the deed for that property you own? Remain standing if you are the only owner on that property. Okay, wonderful. You may have a seat. Now, I'd like for you to stand up if you have inherited property from a family member here in Alachua County. Awesome. Awesome. Well, let me just say how wonderful it is to have all of you join us this evening. This is a chilly night in Gainesville. So you are to be commended for coming out tonight. This summit is all about you. And we're going to share some very valuable information with you. As I walked into this beautiful place of worship, I couldn't help but think about the importance of the work that we're talking about tonight as you all plan to protect your family legacy. Plan for the next generation. What will happen with the family property you own here in Alachua County? And I thought about Proverbs 13:22, which says simply, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And so, if you really think about the work that we have come to do tonight, it is work that will allow you to really think about what is that blessing you want to leave for the next generation? And how do you make that a reality in your family? For me, it all goes back to legacy. When we think about our families, our homes, and so I want to begin with you just doing a visualization with me, if you would. I want you to picture simply grandmother's house. Some may have called her Big Mama, some may have called her Nana, but think about grandmother's house for just a moment. Oh, I can start to smell the cakes baking at Christmas and all of the joyful celebrations in that home, the memories, the hard work, the laughter, the legacy. Now imagine that when grandmother dies without a will or without an estate plan, that home no longer clearly belongs to just one person. In fact, when there is no single owner on paper, the title to that property becomes what we call as attorneys clouded, unclear, unstable, tangled. And so tonight, I am here to talk about heirs property. This is a silent challenge threatening generational wealth, community stability, and economic opportunity in Alachua County. Now, I have to tell you that my story actually begins right here in Gainesville. You see, as a student at the University of Florida, after my first year of law school, go Gators, I decided to do a public interest internship with an organization called the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. And during that internship based in Atlanta, Georgia, I had an opportunity to work with clients who had heirs property. I didn't really know what that was about. But what I learned during that internship experience was that many families across the South were losing land at an alarming rate because they did not have a will when they died. And that land was passed on to their family members who became heirs of that property. Sometimes those heirs could number 5, 10, 50, 75, 100, depending on how long that property remained as heirs property. And so after that experience, I knew that I had found a calling. There was something there that just attracted me to that problem. And so upon my graduation from the University of Florida, I had an opportunity after I finished my Master's of Law degree to go back to that organization. And I had an opportunity to work with heirs property owners. And so for the last 25 years, I have helped thousands of heirs property families and to clear their title. And I started a national heirs property conference, which is still the largest in the country today, because I realized that when my phone would ring most of the time, on the other end of that phone was a really scared person who said, I just inherited heirs property and I don't know what to do next. Because, see, there's no Google for heirs property. AI doesn't have the answers. There's no easy button when you wind up in a situation where you own heirs property with family members. And so what I realized was there needed to be some way to put information in a place where folks could get the help that they needed to resolve their heirs property situation. And so for me, a program like what you have here in Alachua County is groundbreaking. It's groundbreaking because it gives you an opportunity as a landowner to have a one stop shop, one place where you can go and meet the resources that you're going to meet tonight and make those connections that you need to resolve your heirs property situation. Now, one of the most powerful things we can do as a community is to make connections. And here's what I know about heirs property. It's hard. It's what I call head and heart work. You've got to really work through what you're going to do if you find yourself with heirs property or you're the sole owner. So now what do? You have to make some decisions about setting up your estate plan. And so when I think about heirs property, it's hard. You're going to feel like you can't go at it by yourself, and you shouldn't. One of the African proverbs that I like to live by says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so tonight, for me, that sort of summarizes the impact of this type of summit. Because here in Alachua County, your property appraiser has ensured that you have the tools and the resources that you're going to need to protect your family legacy. This is a one of a kind summit, and Tonight, you're going to hear from some very dynamic presenters who will share information with you about how to jumpstart your journey towards estate planning and probate. And over the next year, as Aisha said, this is not just a one and done. Over the next year, there will be follow up opportunities for you to engage with the partners you're going to meet tonight. So, this is your opportunity. This is your time to secure your family's future, to know that you're going to leave an inheritance to your children's children. And so tonight you'll hear from the property appraiser's office. You will hear from the tax collector's office. You will hear from the UF Levin College of Law, Three Rivers Legal Service, and the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. Each of these partners is going to tell you about what I call the toolkit. Now, when I think about tools, I think about some of the things that I tend to keep around the house. One of the tools that I love to use quite often is the measuring tape, because it helps me to kind of figure out what's really accurate about the situation. Sometimes with heirs property, we base a lot of what we think on perception. You need to take out your measuring tape to really set realities, to really set expectations. And then one of my other favorite tools is what I call the leveler. How many of us could use a leveler in our families sometimes? Really helps us to kind of think, what's the common sense approach here? There needs to be a leveler. Now, here's the favorite one that my clients like to use. Most of them walk around and they've got the hammer. And you know, when you have only a hammer in your toolkit, everything looks like a nail. So rather than trying to deal with family conflicts in a way that's constructive, they've got what? The hammer. The hammer typically tends to shut people down, right? It doesn't invite engagement. And so, as an attorney, my job is to make sure that my clients understand that you've got a number of different things in your toolkit that you should be thinking about using. We want to expose you tonight to what those tools really look like. Where do you go to find certain tools that you could use in your estate planning and your probate journey? Now, as it relates to heirs property, what I want you to understand tonight is what is heirs property? How does fractional ownership work? And we're going to have some fun with this tonight. So, we're going to really make this interactive. Challenges created by divided ownership. Exploring consequences of heirs property. And then finally, I want to conclude with giving you some take home strategies for how you're going to protect your land and preserve your family wealth. Well, let's start with the elephant in the room. You see, elephants are always in the room with heirs property. One of the things that you have to understand is our why for tonight. Why does a summit like this make sense for the citizens of Alachua County? Why make this kind of extensive investment to put on this program? The reason why for us tonight is that Alachua County has a $550 million problem. $550 million problem. And I want to break that down because as of 2025, there are at least 1,600 properties in Alachua County that are already classified as heirs property. That means the owner of that property has died, is deceased, and that family has not taken any legal steps to transfer title of that property to someone else. So what's the result? That property title remains unclear, at risk of loss. Now, in addition to those 1,600 properties that are already considered heirs property, Alachua County has 1,600 more properties that have a single owner remaining. So guess what? What happens when that owner dies? What happens if that owner doesn't have a will? Where's this headed? Where's this headed? It's headed to heirs property status. So that property, that additional 1,600 acres, we're already classifying as at risk. So if we look at the total, about 2.9%, 3% of properties in Gainesville are classified as at risk of being lost to heirs property. Now, you may be saying, well, it's just 3%. That's just 3%. But that's 3% of homeowners in your community. That's just like driving past a house and you see smoke coming out the window. Then you see fire billowing from the top of the roof. Now, do you just drive by? Do you think to yourself, wow, I wonder if someone is inside that house? I wonder if someone has called the fire department. I wonder what I can do to help. And so when we think about the challenge of heirs property right here in Alachua County, that $550 million problem is a significant problem. And let me tell you why. Heirs property is a symptom of a broader issue in the community because families losing property are families losing housing. When families lose housing, that's families losing economic opportunity. And when families lose economic opportunity, those are families losing hope. What if we imagined a community where no family, no homeowner, no property owner feels left behind? Imagine if you had all the resources that we needed right here in Alachua County for families to do probate and to complete estate planning. This is our why for tonight. We want to get really clear on our why. So, this summit is designed to put you on the right path tonight so that you have the resources to protect your family's legacy. Now, I want to start to drill down some on what heirs property is because you're going to hear from our other presenters how this all works as it relates to probate and how this works as it relates to estate planning. But here is what you need to know about heirs property. You need to know that heirs property is land that's passed down without a will or an estate plan. And as I've already said, there's been no effort by the heirs, the owners, the family members of this property to change the property over into another name. So the deceased person is still on the title. The property is owned by multiple owners. So in the work that I've done, I have seen properties that date back to the 1900s where you have a group of sometimes 50, 75 owners, one tract of land. Now, imagine the difficulty when you own property as a tenant in common with your cousins, your aunties, your brothers, your sisters, and all of you to make one decision have to all agree. Now, I don't know about you, but most families can't even agree on what we're going to have for dinner. So just imagine the frustration of trying to coordinate 50 to 75 heirs property owners and reach a decision on what they're going to do with the heirs property. Now, heirs property is that problem that continues to compound because each time a generation passes, the next generation is left with a fractional share. And so, what I really want to show you tonight, I need some volunteers. I want to show you how fractional ownership really works. So, can I get about 8 volunteers up on the stage? I want to really walk you through what fractional ownership looks like. So, come on down. If you can help us out here tonight, I want to show you what fractional ownership looks like and why you need Mr. Nix, come on down. I want to tell you why fractional ownership really becomes that monster that you can't contain, you can't control. So come on up. So, Mr. Nix, come on up. I'm going to let you serve as our the person who is in our little example tonight. And all right. So, let's follow along here. Okay. John has 4 children. So, Mr. Nix, I'm going to have you stand right here at the point. So, you're going to let's see here. You stand right here at the point, and I want my volunteers to come out this way, and you're going to line up right across this line right here. Mr. Nix, you stand at the point, and Mr. Nix has 4 children. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. You all stand on this line representing the second generation of Mr. Nick's family. Does everybody have a little bit of the string? I need you all holding just a little bit of the string representing your inheritance from your father. Now, of these 4 children, they all have 4 children. So this gentleman here has 2 kids. Matt, can you stand right here for me? And I need you to grab a part of the string. All right, so keep passing it along. Just like we do with heirs property, it continues to pass down through generations. And ma'am, if you would come here, so you are on this branch right next to him. All right, I need 2 more volunteers on this side. Come on down. All right, all right. Now, this gentleman also has 2 children. So you all are going to stand right here and hold on to this string because this is the lineage that you belong to. All right. Now, where are my math people in the audience? Okay. This is how fractional ownership starts, and this is how it becomes a problem. Let's take this first generation. Mr. Nix, 1 generation removed, has how many kids? So at his death, each of those kids will own what fraction of his property? 1/4. Who got it? Who got it? I got some math folks out there. Fantastic. Each of the 4 children will own 1/4 of his property. So still pretty clean, right? Okay. Now, this gentleman passes on the end. He had 2 children. Okay. How much do these 2 children now own of the property? All right, who's got it? Will someone stand up and tell us how you got there? Can someone tell us? I heard the answer. Who got it? Okay, so how much does each individual share? How much is each individual share? Okay, so we get there by dividing their dad's 1/4 share by 2, so they each own a 1/8 share. All right, everybody with me? Anybody not with me? Okay, let's go over to this side for just a second because this particular heir is starting to cause some problems. Someone has reached out to him and said, "Hey, we know your dad owns some property in Alachua County, and you're going to be an heir essentially to that property. And once your parent passes, we'd like to buy your share of that property." Now, he lives in Chicago now. He could care less about the property back in Alachua County, right? And so he's thinking, how much are you willing to pay me? This investor wants to pay him $5,000. He has nothing, he has no skin in the game. He's probably willing to take that $5,000. And because this is heirs property, none of these folks on the stage can do anything to stop him. And so what tends to happen is when he sells his share, what's going to happen? That investor can force a sale of the entire property. That investor who owns any percentage in the state of Florida can force what's called a legal partition sale, where the entire property is sold for pennies on the dollar. This is happening all across the country because through partitions, and you're going to hear the Federation talk a little bit about their efforts around partition. I have worked on federal and state legislation to make sure heirs are protected from what I call legal thievery, basically. It's buying a share from one of the heirs and being able to force a sale of that entire property. Now, here's some of the other risk. You're going to hear about how once Mr. Nix dies, that property is going to lose homestead protection. Those heirs will have to call the collector's office and let them know that Mr. Nix has died. And their failure to do so could be a problem. You're going to hear the tax collector talk about why. But for most families, when the original heir dies, property value shoots up. So it's not the same. The taxes will go up. And for many families, if you don't have a plan in place to deal with that, that can lead to property loss. And then you have, of course, what I call, this is the heir that everybody's mad at. She and her boyfriend just moved into Mr. Nix's house, and they figure they can live there for free. It was her granddad's property. Now she's right and wrong. Why? Because heirs' property is property of everyone but no one. All of the heirs have the right to use that property any way they want to. And the only way to avoid that is for the heirs to come up with an agreement that says, this is how we're going to manage the property. This is everybody's rights. This is everybody's responsibility. That's called a tenancy in common agreement. And when families are organized, they can come up with something like that that avoids the situation where someone may be utilizing the property to their own benefit. Now, what tends to happen too is that you have that one person in the family who is very diligent about the ownership. They're the only ones paying the taxes on the property. Everybody else is just kind of riding along. And if something happens to the one person who's willing to pay the taxes, guess what happens? That property ends up being sold for a tax deed. So all of these vulnerabilities exist because you've got this tangled web of people. They're connected and they're tied together to a property with cloudy title, insecure, unstable ownership, and they're subject to all of these various threats. Unless they come up with a plan, unless someone up here says, you know what, we need to get a will. If dad died without a will, the rest of us up here need to get a will. We need to have a plan in place. And so this is the challenge. You guys have been great volunteers. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So when we think about even those challenges, okay, some of the fractional ownership challenges, like I said, this thing can continue to grow unabated for years and years and years. And so our call to action tonight really is that we do what we need to do to prevent heirs property from being a problem in your family, from literally stealing your ability to make your land a financial asset. Most people who own their property outright, you have access to credit. Well, heirs property can't be used as collateral. You can't go into a bank and get a home equity loan or a home improvement loan. So what we tend to see is that those heirs property homes in a community, those are the ones that start to show blight and abandonment. Because really, even the heirs up here who could invest in the property don't want to do it because they know it's everybody's property. So they don't invest when they really could invest in making that property a valuable asset. You're going to hear, I mentioned the homestead exemption being lost, even disaster aid. And I have to mention that here in Florida because we're so disaster prone. FEMA requires that you show clear title, proof of ownership to qualify for most of their government loan programs and disaster assistance programs. So that should be a big deal for us here in Florida. Let me close with this. Property ownership is an opportunity to build generational wealth. Today, I urge you not to let your legacy become someone else's asset. You must protect it, secure it, and pass it on. We can't wait for this problem to solve itself. And this is why summits like tonight are so important. I need you to make a commitment for me tonight. I need you to commit that you're going to make 2026 the year that you do the estate planning that you need to do to secure your property, that you're going to start the probate process that you need to start. I want to close with this as we activate and commit to this journey together. And it's something that I say to myself almost every day. And that is this: I am only one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. And what I can do, I ought to do. And by the will of God, I will do. Let's get started, Alachua County. Thank you.